If you like listening to podcasts as much as we do, you may want to listen to us while you're working out or going for a run or doing a number of other things. Maybe you're grocery shopping or maybe you listen to us while you're supposed to be working. Whatever it is, if you want to add a beat in the background for some extra motivation, you should check out this new app called Podbeat.
Podbeat is a free mobile app that lets you add any beat style to any podcast for your workout. It's easy to use and free to download in the App Store. Sometimes podcasts may lose your attention because you're just listening to someone talk. With Podbeat, podcasts are a lot more fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the other thing that I really like about Podbeat is that you can choose from a bunch of different beats. So it's not like you're listening to the same thing over and over. There are a ton of options. Some that I prefer myself. I really like the funk beat, which you can hear in the background right now. And another one that's one of my favorites is the trap beat.
I agree. I love the trap beat as well. I also really like that for each beat I pick, I can change the treble, the BPM, the volume, and the bass levels. I'm like my own DJ. It's a lot of fun. Definitely check out Podbeat in the App Store or also on Google Play Store for Android users. Okay, on to the show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rewind Rewatch podcast. I am Joel.
And I am Andrene.
And we're here on episode 10. We made it. 10 episodes.
Double digits.
Double digits, right. Thank you for those of you who have been listening to the podcast up to this point.
Yes.
We appreciate it. We appreciate all the feedback that we've been getting on social media. As well as people reaching out for suggestions and recommendations.
So I wanted to kind of jump in here. We actually had a listener. I'm just going to call them CP because I don't want to dox anybody and give out their actual information. But
I don't think that's what doxing is.
Well, if you give out their full name, and people can find them on social media.
Yeah, okay.
That's.
Now I'm really worried about what you're about to say about CP.
Adjacent. No. CP was mad cool. But CP basically slid into our DMs, and I'm not going to go into detail of the conversation, but basically they were talking about the Scream fandom a little bit and asking what our thoughts were, because apparently there's been some rumors circulating that they may try to bring back Stu Macher's character in the 7th Scream. And so we kind of did a deep dive, and we had a very engaging conversation about it, and really enjoyed it. So I just want to kind of tell people out there to feel free if you're listening to the first episode now, if you're a new listener, if you're an older listener listening to all of them in the past, feel free to leave us a comment or ask us a question about any of the films we've done before. We're more than happy to talk about them, discuss any questions you may have, any comments you may have. We're available on Instagram. You can reach us at RR90spod. That's RRN0SPOD. You could also send us an email at rewindrewatch1990s@gmail.com. And now we're also available on Facebook at Rewind Rewatch.
And I imagine a lot of people listening right now probably found us on social media anyway. So thanks for the follow, and hopefully you've also subscribed to the pod. And this is actually a perfect segue because we are now getting ready to explore another film that was a listener suggestion as well.
Yes, it absolutely was.
So we're rolling right along, and we're going to have a film now that's right at the beginning of the 90s, Pretty Woman, that came out in 1990.
Yes.
Starring Julia Roberts and Richard Gere.
Some heavy hitters here.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Julia Roberts. Actually, so I went back to kind of see how this fell as far as the timeline compared to the other Julia Roberts movies. So prior to this one, she had 2 movies that were on the bigger side. She had Mystic Pizza in 88, and then she had Steel Magnolias in 89. And then this came out in 1990. And then after this movie is where we get The Pelican Brief, My Best Friend's Wedding, Notting Hill, Erin Brockovich. Those all came after this film came out.
So this is kind of the jumping off point. She's like, all right, I'd had some films in the 80s.
Yeah.
She wasn't the lead in either of those though, right? Because I think, wasn't Mystic Pizza a Cher movie? Or
I never
am I
saw that
making that
movie, to
up?
be quite honest. I've never seen it. I just know the name.
Right. At this point, I could be wrong about that, and if I'm wrong, please feel free to let me know. But this is obviously her playing co-lead, and then as we go into the '90s, just looking at some of the films that Andrene just named, that's kind of where she like really took off, where she was probably one of the biggest names in Hollywood throughout the '90s. And like this was not intentional either, I don't think, but I feel like we throughout the first 10 episodes have hit a lot of like the heavy players of the '90s with Julia Roberts, and we had Tom Hanks, and we had a couple Robin Williams, and we had Jennifer Love Hewitt. So I feel like as this podcast continues, we'll probably still get to it. There's a few that have popped up in my head as I'm thinking about some of the big hitters of the '90s that we haven't gotten to yet.
I know.
That I'm not gonna say what I'm thinking yet because I want it to be a surprise when we put out episodes each week. But this is the first Julia Roberts movie that we have covered, and I don't remember who did the one sentence summary last week, if it was me or you, but I know we've been going back and forth. So I think this is. I think I did Aladdin. Did I do Aladdin?
Possibly.
All right.
Okay.
This is a pretty pretty obvious synopsis here. There's not a lot of nuance in terms of what this movie is about. But do you want to go ahead and give your one sentence summary?
Yeah. A millionaire pays a sex worker to pretend to be his girlfriend for a weekend.
Okay. Yeah, kind of.
It was a weekend, right?
It was a week.
Oh, it was a week.
So that's one thing.
It was a week. That's right.
The other part, well, I guess we could just get into it right now because I think that's the whole
it.
Yeah, like you said, he paid her to kind of pretend to be his girlfriend. And I think that's a big question that I had as I'm watching the movie is like, is this like a, hey, you're a prostitute, and so I'm basically just like paying for you to have sex with you for the next week?
What was more than
that? He
doesn't
really know anything about her. He falls for her eventually, but I mean, it wasn't like, oh, hey, I just want you to show up to these places and like pretend to be my lady, because number one, he didn't really need her in the room as he's cutting these deals. I'm sure he wasn't bringing women with him to a lot of his other meetings.
Well, he was, because remember his attorney played by, I would say George Costanza. I know it's not his real name.
That is not his real name.
Jason Alexander, who played George Costanza on Seinfeld. There's actually a scene where I believe he said something like, come on, bring a date. And he actually wanted to set him up with someone. And he's like, don't worry about it. I found someone. I bring a girl with me. So like he actually wanted him to bring a date when meeting with that older gentleman whose company he wanted to buy and his grandson. He wanted him to have a woman there with him on the date. And the very first scene, we hear him on the phone with his girlfriend as she's breaking up with him.
Right.
And he's actually asking her, like, oh, like, I think she's back at the hotel or something. And he's saying something about, like, she's upset because the whole time that she's been there on this business trip, she's been talking to his secretary more than talking to him. So, I mean, his lawyer did want him to bring a woman with him. So I think he did, in fact, need someone in order to cut these deals. The whole idea of, like, this guy is stable, there's a woman by his side, the woman kind of softens everything up. So did he necessarily, quote unquote, need? Maybe not, but it was suggested his attorney did want him to have a woman with him. That was definitely mentioned on a phone call.
Yeah, I think that's still a bit of a reach for me because he's still like sleeping with this woman. And
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying
it's not like, oh, I just need you to be here for this meeting with this guy. It's like, nah, it's like I'm asking you to be here. I don't know. It was weird because on the one hand, when they're first starting to engage with one another, there's like the sense that he's like hesitating to sleep with her at first. She's just trying to kind of get down to business.
Right.
Let's do this so that I can get back out there. And he's just kind of like hesitating. It seems like at certain points that he's actually not going to sleep with her. He orders some champagne,
Right, and
but he's like, I don't
strawberries.
drink.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is actually going on here? And then they have sex anyway, and then they have sex again the next day. So then it's like, what is actually happening here? Like, is he like pretending to be like this good guy who's saving this street worker, or is he actually just like want somebody to be at his beck and call in his hotel room so he could come back and bang her? So it's like, I wasn't really sure how to read that whole relationship.
I agree with that because I remember watching it and kind of going back to the movies we covered before, thinking about The Fugitive and Aladdin and the question of, is this a good guy, right? And as I'm watching it, I had kind of a similar question because on the one hand, he's had trouble in the past with women. This is clear.
Right.
Because there's one scene where he's talking to a woman who apparently he used to date. And he says to her, hey, I was just on the phone with... No, he didn't actually say this to her, but he had just spoken to his girlfriend who broke up with him and basically asked this woman, hey, did you talk to my secretary more than me when we were together? And she was like, I mean, yeah, she was a bridesmaid in my wedding. So, like, this is what you do. Like, you put your work before anything. And so I think by him paying for her to be there, it was kind of, like, feeling very icky to me because it was like, you can't keep a real relationship, so you're just going to essentially pay this woman to be here. So I was like, I don't really care for that. And then it's also like this whole like the quote unquote save a hoe kind of idea where it's like, oh, I'm gonna throw
literally,
I'm gonna throw money at you. Oh my God, like I'm gonna throw money at the situation and
technically
like
save the hoe.
Your life is gonna be so much better because I gave you this $3,000 for the week. And like again, I know
it is actually going to make her life.
Yeah, so we see from the beginning that she can't make rent because her roommate is basically using it on drugs, and she owes her dealer, I think, like an extra $200 or something. And so you see her like sneaking out of the apartment, going down the fire escape to avoid having to pay rent because the landlord is basically like trying to get money from people, and she's like, "Oh, we ain't got it." So she clearly needs the money, yes. But there's a part where even she starts to feel like, you're treating me like trash because it's like, oh, I'm going back to New York, but like, guess what? You can come too. I'll put you up in a condo. And she was like, I kind of want more out of my life now. Like, I don't.
Well, before we get to that, I wanted to go back on something else that you said because you talked about how he like has trouble maintaining a relationship, and I guess I had a different read on it where I didn't necessarily see it as like he has trouble with relationships. I read it more as like he doesn't really care about them. Like he's just kind of like making his money. His business is essentially like taking advantage of people who are in vulnerable positions, buying out their company, and then like liquidating it and selling it for parts.
Exactly.
And he comes off to me as like this millionaire playboy where it's like he just basically like dates different women for like a month or so, and so he doesn't it didn't seem to me based on how he presented, but then even how like the people who knew him talked about him, it came off to me as like, oh, he just kind of like meets these women, has these temporary flings, and then like moves on to the next one. Even when they go to the polo grounds and he brings her with, Julia Roberts' character Vivian with him to the polo, and he like introduces her to some women that already know him, and they're like, oh, like this is your new flavor of the month or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, like every time they see this man, he has a girl, but it's never the same girl. So to me, it didn't really seem like this is a guy who's like looking for love. Like he's just out here.
He was married once. He's an ex-wife. So, I mean, at least at one point, he may have been looking for something more serious.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
So that's why I was like, maybe he just doesn't really... he doesn't value women that much I can see in this movie. He does not value women for sure.
He values them $3,000 worth.
Oh, God. Well, the first time it was...
he does value them monetarily.
It was $300 for the first night was what she ended up charging him because...
Which is essentially what she would get from 3 Johns because she says
Right.
she charges each of them $100.
$100 to get
So
in the
that's
car.
like, yo, I'll pay you $300, and then you just stay here and don't go back out tonight.
She was like, all right,
I
cool.
bet.
And I gave champagne and strawberries. And even she was confused by that because she was like, what is this? Like, you don't drink. Like, why are we? And then, like, she's sitting down watching I Love Lucy and then, like, and eating, like, all the food that's available in the hotel. It was just very
That sounds
bizarre.
like a fun night to me.
I mean, yeah, but it was just like, what are you doing? Like, what's your motivation?
Yeah, it's like, what is he getting at? Like, and this is the whole thing with this movie is like, I was having a hard time reading this Edward character, which is obviously Richard Gere, and it's just like, yo, who is this guy? Like, he's kind of nice, but kind of also a jerk, but also kind of benevolent, but also kind of greedy. And I guess that's just,
Human nature.
we're all a bit contradictory, but I think, especially in film narrative, like it's important to be able to identify key characteristics within especially your main character. And I was like having a little bit of a hard time reading like, who is this guy actually, and what are we supposed to see from him? Or is the intent for us to just be viewing this from Vivian's perspective, and this guy is basically like Prince Charming, like the rich man who's going to give her everything she wants? Like, is this basically just the whole purpose of him is like he's Mr. Moneybags? Maybe. And that's kind of, I felt like that was like all we really got out of Edward.
Yeah, it was very weird. Like, he did make comments at some point talking about how like she surprised him, because there's the one scene when he takes her back to the hotel and she's in the restroom. And he's like, what are you doing in there? And she's like, I'll be out in a second. And then he opens the door and she's hiding something behind his back. So he, of course, thinks she's in there, like, probably snorting coke or something. And he's like, oh, I can't have any drugs in here. You got to go. And then she's like, it's not drugs. She's like, what is it? And then she opens her hand up and it's like floss. And she's flossing her teeth. And it was so endearing to him because he was like, oh, it's not often someone surprises me. And I was like, oh, okay. So you were judging her, and now you find out that although she's, in the job field that she is, she's not quote unquote trash. Like, she's taking care of her teeth. And for some reason he was like, oh, she's not doing drugs. She's just she's just
keeping
taking
up
care of
her
her dental
dental
hygiene.
hygiene,
Yeah. Jinx, buy me a soda.
Right. Soda.
Soda.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's more I could say about Edward, but
You want to talk about the scene where he first meets her?
sure. So they're at this party. Edward's there with a bunch of his corporate cronies, and I don't even really remember why he leaves
It's like
early. He just doesn't want to be there.
He was over it, but his car was parked like too far back.
Yeah, he had like limo service.
They couldn't get it out.
The driver was stuck behind a bunch of cars in the driveway. His man's Phil, who's played by George Costanza, is basically like, oh yeah, just borrow my car and you could just get back to Beverly Hills that way.
Right.
So he's like, I bet. He doesn't know how to drive a stick, and he doesn't live in California because he's from New York.
Right.
So he actually doesn't know where he's going. So right off the bat, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense at all. Because at first I'm thinking, wait, they're leaving this party and he has like, how is he getting lost? Isn't he from there? And then I'm realizing as the film goes on, like, oh, he's actually not from there.
Exactly.
So then I'm like, oh, that actually makes this make even less sense because
why are you allowing him to take your car?
yeah, why? Like, what is actually the plan here? Like, first of all, how are you getting your car back? I guess you can get that worked out, but then it's also like there's no Google Maps. It's not like he has an atlas in the car.
Right.
Like, he has no idea anything. And he also doesn't drive because he gets driven everywhere. He literally says later on in the movie that like, oh, my first car was a limo. And
exactly.
so like, he doesn't actually drive.
Yeah.
So he definitely doesn't know where he
Terrible
is
plan.
or how he's going. So then it's just like he's just driving around aimlessly and hoping that he stumbles upon Beverly Hills. Like, it doesn't actually make any sense.
And then he ends up in the red light district, like driving around like, hey, anybody know how to get to Beverly Hills? And she's like, yeah, you're definitely not where you're supposed to be. But her outfit that she had on, boy, she was out here working these streets, let me tell you. I said, okay, girl. Because she was giving it. Those knee-high boots,
I mean,
they were, But they were giving. That's what the kids be saying.
Yeah, I mean that was
They were
like
giving.
the stereotype, right? Of like streetwalkers in high plastic boots with the heel, with the shoes are so worn and she can't afford to get new ones that she's coloring in the black
With a
on her
magic
heels with a
marker.
magic marker just to make it look like it's not all run
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
And her friend Kit, who's played by the woman from Just
Shoot Me.
Laura San Giacomo.
Yeah.
So they're just like living in this like flop house, which is actually like a rented out room in a motel.
Yeah. That's very LA.
And it seems like they knew each other once upon a time. When she was trying to figure out what to do, she ended up in LA. And then her friend's like, oh, hey, I'm basically a hooker. Like, do you want to do this? And she's like, okay.
But one thing I will say that's smart of them is they don't have a pimp.
Yes.
Like they said that they work for themselves, they make their own
Which would have
money.
made this a very different film.
Oh, it would have been a lot darker.
Yes, it would have been a much darker movie.
Which it actually was supposed to be darker, and I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
But yeah, so she decides to take on this lifestyle, and it seems as if like, I mean, looking at this movie, it's like they don't really. It's not very dark. It's not like you're not seeing like
no.
You know, you're not seeing women getting beat up. Although there was one scene where I think there was someone that they knew that they were found. She was found murdered. Like, and
Hank Azaria's just there as the detective,
Yes.
and I'm just like, oh, I didn't know he was in this movie. But then he doesn't come back.
He's really
again,
not,
so
right?
He's not. I'm like, oh, I guess
like
we're not seeing.
yeah.
Hank
So
anymore.
there's like they mention this body. We don't never actually see the body, but there are tourists at one point like just snapping photos.
oh look, honey, it's a dead prostitute.
Dead body. Oh, this is LA. It's like, whoa. But again, like people would do this, so that's not that surprising. But yeah, they kind of touched on the fact that like, yes, there's violence in this particular occupation, but they didn't really get into it where we felt like what she's doing is dangerous, if that makes sense. You know, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, she's out here and she meets this great guy or this rich guy, and this is what happens to her. But I never really felt like she was in any real danger. Like, even though her friend like owed money to this guy for the drugs, like I never really felt like
It wasn't
You know?
that. Yeah, it didn't come off to me as like some like mafia guy who's like going to break their legs. It was like, yo, you owe me some money. Like it was like,
yeah.
there's a guy that I know and he sells drugs, but it wasn't like some shady deal gone bad where, you know, I owe him gambling debt, or it wasn't anything like that. It was just like, yo, they're broke. Like that was really the whole point of it.
Yes.
So yeah, he's lost and he's, you know, driving around LA aimlessly. He's in Hollywood somehow, and then he's like, he pulls over because he's lost, and they're like, oh, it looks like some guy is like, that's a hot new car. Looks like he got money. Like, yo, go holler at this man. So Julia walks over like, yo, what's good? You trying to have a good time? And he's like, actually, I'm trying to get to Beverly Hills. It's like, oh, I'll tell you where to go, but you're gonna have to pay me.
And just like $10 or something.
Yeah.
And then he was like, are you kidding me? She's like, it's up to 20 now. And he was like, oh my gosh. All right, fine. Better than that, I'll show you. And then she gets in the car with him. Yeah, so when they get to this hotel, right? And this scene was really funny to me because, I mean, she's just walking around like, this is me, this is who I am. Like, I'm not going to cover up because this is... And he's like, oh, put my coat on. And she's like, why? And he's like, it's a really nice hotel. Like, this is not an hourly rate type of spot. And she's like, okay. And she walks in and she's like, whoa. This is a very, like, nice... You got a lot of these older, like, white, stuffy people looking around, looking at her like, oh, like, just very, very appalled, right? They're looking at her, they're judging her.
I mean, well...
It's like
they have reason to be appalled.
It's like you have no clothes on.
Yeah, this is like an upscale. Like
you have no clothes on.
You got to be making money to even step foot into this.
Exactly.
And this is not the type of place that people are bringing streetwalkers. It's like if you're gonna pay for it, you're gonna be paying one of them escort services.
Right.
It's not gonna be a girl off the
street. Right. Exactly. So like she walks in and these people are just like almost like literally clutching their pearls, like pulling their clothes together, feeling really uncomfortable that she's there. And he goes up to the penthouse with her, And she's just blown away because she's never seen anything like this in her life. She's like, this is how you live? Like, you must be a lawyer. And he's like, no, not really. And again, this is the part where I'm kind of like, okay, so they come into the room and she's, like you said, ready to get down to business. She's like, all right, this is what we're here for. This is what we're here for. And he's like, no, can we just talk? And she's like, okay, like, what about? Like, are you married? Like,
Yeah,
what is
doing?
it? And, he's just kind of like, oh, just kind of like talking about nothing. And I was like, bro, like, what exactly is your motivation here? Like, what?
Yeah, it didn't.
What is your motivation?
It didn't add up for me because it's one thing to say like, okay, I need this woman's help to get me to my hotel because I'm lost, which she does. And then she's like, all right, cool, appreciate it. And I'm about to go back. And she's about to get on the bus. He's like, yo, what are you doing? Getting on the bus? He's like, yeah. And it's cheaper and it'll get me where I need to go.
Exactly.
I ride the bus all the time. He's like, yeah, how about you come back?
Upstairs.
How about you come upstairs?
Well,
like,
I think at that moment, maybe he was like thinking about sleeping with her, but maybe he wasn't sure. Maybe he wasn't sure about paying for it. I don't know. Like,
I feel like they should have made that clear.
No, I understand that, but like just trying to make sense of it for me, it's like, well, maybe he was like, I'm not sure if I actually want to go through with this. So let's talk first. Maybe I'll, feel a little better after whatever. But then they end up having sex multiple times. And so that's why I kind of got into this gray area for me because it was like, so are you just paying for her to be there, but then you're catching feelings at some point? And
I don't know. It's
very confusing. I was like, I don't really know what's going on here.
Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah, my man Edward is basically like, okay, at a point it almost seems like he sees her about to get on the bus, and it's like he feels sorry for her almost.
Just give her more money.
Which is like, yeah, like, okay, you actually don't know this woman outside of like the 30 minutes that you spent together in your car, which she actually had to drive.
And you know that you
didn't know how to drive.
It's like, she knows cars. Like, dope. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, maybe, but then it's like he actually doesn't care about any of that because he has a limo driver. So it's like, yeah, she knows cars, but I guess it was more so like this concept of maybe there's more to her than just her being a prostitute. It's
yeah. Well, remember, and then even like when they're upstairs and she says to him like, yeah, I'll do anything, but like I don't kiss on the mouth. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, neither do I. And it was like, okay, well, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Match made in heaven, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to build a connection with someone. Lack of intimacy, check. It was weird because it's like, yeah, like why does he even care about any of this? Because it's like, I got back to my hotel, thanks. And like, yeah, it was not clear to me why he even cared to learn more about her in the first place, outside of he found her attractive, he wanted to get some, maybe a little bit of both. But then I don't know how it gets from that to like, yo, how about you just stay here all week? Like, what? And so as I'm watching the movie, I typically try to like take notes just so that I can like organize my thoughts. One of the things that I wrote down was, does Edward actually like this woman or is he just lonely for attention? And she's obviously like validating him a ton because she's never been in this environment. So I think that's also like giving him a little bit of a boost to his ego to like, he's used to being around rich people who are probably not as impressed with his wealth.
That could be.
So then I'm like, yeah, like is he getting an ego boost from her and he's enjoying that? Is he just lonely because he's constantly falling out of touch with these women that he dates and he just wants someone around? Or is there, I assume what the writers wanted us to believe, some deeper motivation to get this woman and eventually fall for her? It just didn't really track for me.
But what about her shopping fiasco where she initially tries to get a cocktail dress for dinner, and of course she goes in, she's wearing her street clothes, and she walks in. She walks into the. And this is a scene that most people know. She walks in. She's looking at the clothing. She's like, "Oh, this is very nice. How much is this outfit on the mannequin?" And this lady, like in this posh shop, looks at her and automatically judges, like, "Oh, she cannot afford this. Like, she's a sex worker. There's no way." So she's like, "Oh."
And also, her clothes are like mad ratty and cheap.
Yes.
So on top of that,
so you're just kind of like,
you're not
there's
even
no
like,
way.
You're not even like a high earning sex worker, like.
But also like you could just tell her what the cost is, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
you couldn't just
of
been like,
course.
"Oh, this is $1,500 or whatever."
Yeah.
So she's like, "How much is this outfit?" And it's like, "Oh, like it's really expensive." I was like, "Oh, okay, it's really expensive." So she's like, "Yeah, but how much?" And she's like, "Look, this store is not for you."
It's very expensive. Look, I got money to spend in here. I don't think we have anything for you. You're obviously in the wrong place. Please leave.
Like basically like kick rocks.
Yeah.
Keep it moving. So, now Vivian's character is all distraught because her one job was to go and get money for this outfit for this dinner tonight. And I'm thinking like, this man's paying her 3 G's plus money for clothes. I'm like, oh, she's coming up. She's coming up.
Yeah, she's definitely coming up, and that's kind of the whole like rags to riches story of, I guess, what this movie is ultimately about. And I think that's the other part when we talk about like how she goes on this shopping spree and like he's giving her all this food to eat and he's buying her new clothes and da 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 da. And it's like, yo, like this is like textbook tricking. Like this is really,
yes,
like this man is tricking off.
Yes.
And it's just like, yo, what is happening in this movie? Like,
even I was also like a little sickened by, so like, yes. So you take her shopping and then at the end she goes back to that same store and she basically is like, you remember me yesterday, you wouldn't help me.
And now she has on the nice clothes.
Yeah. And
so
she has her hands are full of bags,
Yeah,
and it's
now
like, I look the part now. It's like, I have money. And she's like, remember me from yesterday? And the lady's like, no. And she's like, well, you wouldn't help me. You work on commission, right? And she's like, I do. And she's like,
Big mistake. Big. Huge. I have to go shopping now.
That's the line everybody knows, and she walks out. So, like, that was like, she got her revenge. I had no problem with that. What kind of made me turn off a little bit was prior to that scene, she goes shopping with Gere's character, Edward, in the store. And he's like saying to the store people, like, I'm getting ready to spend an obscene amount of money in this store. So we need a lot of sucking up. And the guy's basically like falling over himself to be like, oh, yes, sir, like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, not to me, do it to her. And he's like, more sucking up, more. And I kind of was like, this is a lot. Like, I just felt like,
it's kind of gross.
If it was me and I was her, I would just be like, I don't need you to be like putting.
I don't think
like,
she hurt him though.
I understand that, but like just like that concept of it was just like, we know that you have money, like we get it, but like these people didn't treat her poorly. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, why are you making them like grovel in your presence because you can throw money at, like, I just didn't like it. I was like, this is making me feel kind of icky. So I didn't like that character trait in him. I was like, you're doing, like, helping her out. Yes, cool, fine. But like, why do you have to take it to the next level? Like, versus Barney, who's the general manager of the hotel. He ends up like making a phone call to his friend Bridget from a boutique store to help her buy a dress. And then he also shows her how to use the silverware.
Yeah, it gives her like an etiquette
course. So it's like you're doing things that to actually benefit her that's going to help her, as opposed to like, I don't know, like making people.
But this is what he is. He's Mr. Moneybags.
It was just so much.
He's essentially just like throwing his money around this entire movie. Like that's really just like what it is. It's like she meets this guy who's intrigued and interested in her for whatever reason that we're, I guess, supposed to just guess. Because they don't tell us, really. And then it's just like, oh, I'm interested in you, and there's something about you that makes me want you to still be here. So, like, here's just mad money. And so, like, everything that he does, any, like, act of kindness is really just him spending his own money.
Exactly.
It really wasn't really anything else that he did other than just, like, throw money at stuff.
Exactly.
I also wanted to talk about when she goes into that store the first time, and those two women are basically just, like, looking at her with disgust, and just, like, this stuff is too expensive for you, honey, or whatever. And they're basically just trying to get her to leave. Yeah. And I'm like, yo, it's crazy because the way she's coming in this store and getting discriminated against, it's almost like she's a black person.
That's literally what I have in my notes.
It's like,
I had they treated Vivian like a black woman.
a black person.
Well, a black person. Yeah,
Yeah, because
But,
if
like,
she was a black man, they would have done the same thing.
yes, but I'm saying it was a woman's store. That's why I said black woman.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my mind, that's what I wrote down because I was like, this is what happens to us. Like we walk in and they're following you around, and it's like, oh, like, can you actually afford? And clearly, yes, it's gotten better. Yes, but it's like if Oprah can be discriminated against, then it could happen to anyone else.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, they're trying to make us feel bad for this woman by basically having her get treated like a black person.
Right. That's literally how I felt.
It's like, oh, okay. Oh, man, this is so sad. This is so tough.
I literally was thinking that because I was like, yo, just take off the sex worker and just make it a black person, and you have the same
Yeah, it's
scenario.
the exact same scene.
It's the same scenario.
The scene plays out exactly the same. So I was just like, yeah, like I guess this is white struggle. It's like you have to be a sex worker, essentially.
Oh man, that's
So
crazy.
yeah, that was the thing about that scene. But yeah. So then it's like she's basically spending this man's money, getting all these clothes, getting all this stuff, and she's like calls her friend Kit, and she's like, yo, like it's lit. Like this dude that you told me to go with, like he got me up here like it's good money. Like,
Yeah.
I'm making money. Like I'm up right now just from getting in this guy's car. On top of that, he's like having me stay here and he's giving me even more money. He's giving me clothes. I'm gonna leave money for you at the front desk.
Yeah,
Come
I
through
like
and get
that.
some.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Cause she also is like, you need to pay our rent.
Yes.
So that when I do come out of this, I still have a place to
But
stay.
she left her half of the money. She said, "Here's your half."
Oh, I didn't
It
realize
was
that.
half of it.
Oh, that's crazy.
Because I'm like, yo, this is her girl.
Yeah.
That's how you treat your best friend. Like that's your
Yeah,
girl.
they definitely knew each other for a while because it seemed like she like came to California and moved in with Kit. So it's like, oh, they knew each other from some other before all of this was going on.
Right.
And then it's like essentially, I'm trying to think of exactly what happened where she ended up getting mad at him.
Oh, it was when he offered her the condo in New York. He was like, "Oh, I can." Well, no.
Okay.
So before that, she got upset because when they went to the polo game, and while they were there, the attorney George Costanzo
right.
approaches her and basically like puts his hand on her shoulder, like, "Yeah, well, after Edward leaves, maybe we can have some fun." And like,
well, yeah. So let's rewind actually because this is another thing that did not make sense to me, which is now becoming a running theme of this episode. Like he's basically like, "Yo, where'd you find this girl from?" So Phil is basically trying to ask Edward, like, yo, where'd this girl come from? You never had this girl. You don't live here. Like, who is this woman?
exactly.
And he thinks that Vivian is
Like working with basically the grandson of the owner of the company that Edward is trying to basically.
he thinks it's a conflict of interest.
Right. He thinks that Vivian basically is working for the other side. So he's
Right.
like, yo, can you trust this woman? Like, where'd she come from?
So she knows the guy because they went to dinner.
Exactly.
So she knows him from the dinner, but George Costanza just sees them talking.
George Costanza.
And then he's like, yo, how does she even know this guy? Like, this is the guy that we're basically trying to like pawn off his company.
Right.
And now
So
this
I get
random
that.
woman that you're not telling me anything about is chatting him up.
You're right.
Like, did you meet her from them?
Right. Use your brain, bro.
And if so, like, they might be using her to play you.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, nah, actually, let me tell you what happened. And so then he just like tells him the whole story
Yeah.
of like, oh yeah, I got lost in your car and I picked up this woman off the street and now she's staying with me. It's like, wait, what? So I guess my first thing was just like, why did he actually tell Phil the truth?
Because that's his lawyer, and I think he's known this guy for a while. Like, I feel like he also wanted to make it clear that she's not a plant. It's like, no, I actually just met her on the street, bro. Like, there's no way that they're connected. Like, she's not even from this world. And, like, I didn't see anything wrong with that because, again, if they've been...
But if he knows that he knows Phil,
Well, maybe
then he knows Phil. Then he knows how Phil's
a
gonna,
creep.
Yeah, he knows how Phil is gonna carry it. So then it's like,
Yeah.
it seemed a little like, bro, do you
Irresponsible?
do you even know what's going on here? And there's obviously a reason why you weren't telling Phil in the first place. And it felt like it took
could've made up the
very
story.
little for him to just be like, okay, I'll tell you what really like.
Yeah.
He folded a little quickly. So then that happens, and then Phil is basically like, all right, well, Edward doesn't live here. He's going back to New York soon.
Right.
So when he leaves,
I'll pay
like,
you.
let's see what's good. Because for in Phil's mind, you are basically here because Edward is paying to sleep with you.
Right.
Which technically is exactly what's happening.
Right.
So as far as he's concerned, there is no deeper connection between Edward and Vivian, and he would have no reason to believe that there was.
Edward didn't really say anything.
And also, Edward
He didn't
doesn't
say-
keep women in his life.
Yeah, exactly.
So then it's
exactly.
like, oh, he's gonna leave. She'll still live here.
And I
then it's
have money.
Yeah,
so.
and I got money too, so I can pay for it the same way Edward's paying for it. And she's put off. She's disgusted. So now she's pissed off. Why did you tell Phil? Da 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 da.
Yeah.
She's mad at him, and he's just like, oh, like, you know, whatever. I still want to keep seeing you though, so it can be lit. Like, even though I have to go back to New York, I can just like get you a place, and then like I can just, you know, visit you, you visit me. Like, we can keep this thing going. Like, basically, I'll just keep just like spending money so that you don't have to go back to being on the streets.
Yeah.
And that's the point where she's like, oh, so what do you think I'm like? Some sort of hooker? It's like,
And he was
yes,
like,
nigga.
yeah.
Like, that's exactly what this is.
He was like, yeah.
Like, why do you think she got so offended by this?
So was this after like he went out and like took her to the opera and like taught her how to play chess? Remember, he was like doing all these things. I feel
That's true.
So it's like you're basically showing me this other world like that I would never be able to see before. Like, she's crying during the opera. Like, he's really like. So I think maybe in her mind she's like, he sees me a little bit differently. I doubt he's picking up other women and doing all these things with them. So I think like they even
But your relationship with this man is only supposed to last for a week. So what actually is even?
I don't know. I feel
you know what I'm saying? Like, what was she thinking? Because what he's basically saying is like,
let's keep this thing going.
we're gonna be together for a week. We'll do a bunch of cool stuff. I'll splash some cash, have you experience new things, make you feel good. Here's a bunch of clothes you can keep. And then at the end of the week, like, deuces.
Right.
Like, that was the agreement from
Right.
the
But now
onset.
Right. But now he's like, oh, I'll get
So
you a
now he's like,
condo.
yo, this is actually kind of like lit. Like, let's keep this going. And she's like,
But
what?
I think it's the idea of like, now this man is just paying for your entire life. I don't know. I mean, to some women, some
But
women,
he's also enhancing her life because
Yeah.
she's broke.
and also, like I said, there's some women that love that. Like, they have no problem with a man financing everything or being the side chick and having him pay for their condo and buy their cars. And a lot of women think that's a come up. To
I
be
also
honest.
feel like, and I'm trying to avoid sounding like some sort of sexist, but it's
Uh-oh.
also like,
Uh-oh.
But I also feel like if she is, I'm trying to figure out how to say this the right way. How does she basically, like, where's this high horse coming from? Like, because essentially you are sleeping with random men every night, basically to make ends meet.
Right.
And Edward comes in and basically says, I will basically
Your-
finance your life.
Your ends are met.
Yeah. And now, instead of having to sleep with random men every night, you're just going to be sleeping with me. So it's like, I'll be your fake boyfriend, and you'll basically get the spoils of me being rich.
I don't know.
So then it's like, no, how dare you? And then, like, you're going to go back to sleeping with random
I
men
don't
for less
know.
money? Like, I don't understand where's the line where she's basically saying, like, this is
too much.
this is so gross that you would dare try to pay me off. It's like,
Yeah,
bro, this
'cause
is
Kit-
literally,
When she was telling Kit, Kit was like, "This is amazing." Like,
yeah, like,
Kit
I don't
was like,
like, where's the problem?
yeah, Kit was like, "Okay, so let's move out to New York." Like,
Like, what are we actually talking about here? Like, we're broke.
Kit was like, "I'll pack my bag."
My bag's packed. Like, I got them.
Kit was like, "Let's go."
I brought them with me. Like, I wasn't trying to go back. Like, Kit is ready to rock and roll. She's like, I don't know. I don't think I can. I don't know. Like, it just,
Yeah.
it doesn't really add up for me.
Yeah, again, I
guys.
was trying
It's
to
not
think,
adding
like,
up.
is it the whole, like, again, being owned by one man, like, they don't have a pimp, and this is, like, just another And again, like, yes, he's enhancing her life. Like, I get all of that. But I'm just trying to find the motivation.
I mean, that does
so it's
kind
like
of
maybe
make
it's
sense.
like this whole like, you'll be basically essentially owning me because you're paying for everything.
Yeah.
And if you decide to cut me off,
I'm right back to square
done.
one. Yeah.
So it's like, this really isn't a safe thing to do for me because, I mean, think about it. Like, if you're used to living John to John and, barely making rent, scraping by, like, yes, it sucks, but you're kind of used to that life. Now I'm going to live.
And you're in control.
In this lap of luxury for who knows how long. It could be 2 months. And then he says, you know what? I'm over it. I'm done with you. What am I going to do?
Yeah, then you're SOL.
And now I'm back to where I was before? After getting a taste of that life?
Yeah.
You can forget about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to screw you up. So I kind of get, it's like, bro, how do I, like, maybe not the offended part, but the whole, like, how can I even trust this? That'd be more of my thing.
Sense.
Like, how can I trust this plan? Because who's to say he might find someone he likes, and then she's like now you got a girlfriend, it's over. So, I mean, I don't know.
It did feel like a fence.
It definitely did.
The whole concept of him telling Phil is kind of what started the argument.
Yes.
And then he tried to, like, make up for it by creating this condo.
Well, again, it's
concept.
because I get why she was upset about Phil, because it was like, again, you're treating me in a way, like, when we're in public, at least. He even says to her, like, he's showing her, like, how to act a certain way, wear certain things. She learns about stomping of the divots, which I had no idea what that was. Do you know about that before looking this up? So
I didn't look it up, but
I did.
I figured out what they were doing.
Yeah, I just was like, I've never heard of stomping of divots before.
We have never gone to
I've
the polo.
never been to a polo match. But yeah, it's like a halftime, and all the spectators like jump over the fence, and it's a whole thing where like they run around, stomping around, like, where the horse's hooves come up, and like part of the grass kind of creates like these like mounds of earth that come up.
Yeah, it's like all the spots on the
field, the grass,
field that have been kicked up by the horse's hooves, or probably also by the polo sticks.
Right.
And then like they're basically like
they go down
flattening the ground back so that
make it
it's
a little bit more even,
back to even ground.
And I'm like, oh, this is like just some kind of tradition that's been started back in the day that people still do today. So that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I learned something new today because I've never heard of a divot or stomping of one. So that was interesting. But yeah, I feel like he's, showing her a different way of life, and even the way he treats her in public, at least. He doesn't like disparage her. He's not like, you don't know about this, you're an idiot. Even the way he talks to her is very much like, I'm teaching you these things, but it's not in a way where it's like, oh, you're just a street walker.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think in her mind, it's like, oh, like this guy sees something in me, and he's, making me think that I'm better than what I thought maybe even I was. But then now I'm finding out that he's running around telling people, for all I know, he's telling people that this is who I am. And this guy comes up to me and he's like, oh yeah, when he's done, like, I got you next. Like, that's wild.
Yeah, it's not the vibe.
That's wild. So, I mean, I got her being mad about that more than the condo, to be honest.
So then after this thing, they get in this whole argument, and she's like, you know what? Like, this has been real, but I'm out of here. Like, I'm about to dip.
Yes.
So she's like packing up all her stuff, and he's like, all right, well, if you're going to leave, like, at least let me pay off my balance.
Right.
So
oh, God.
Then he basically, like, tries to give her money. She turns her back. He puts it on the bed. Mm-hmm. She looks at it, and she walks out.
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
bruh, why didn't you take that money?
But why did she leave the money?
That's exactly what
because
I was thinking. Girl, you need that money.
Regardless of whether you want to keep talking to Edward or not.
You need that money, child.
Take the money.
Take the money and run.
And like, take the money and walk. He's not even going to miss it. He's not even going to miss that money.
Yeah.
Like, he's giving it to you and like, again, back to my original point, like, everything that he does that's supposed to be a kind gesture is really just him spending money. So then it's just like, this is how he cleans up things. It's just like, oh, damn, I'm sorry this didn't work out. Here's some bread. So then it's like, yeah, like, this is all he's doing the whole time. But I'm just like, this, if it didn't make sense to me why he told Phil, okay, we can kind of try to make sense of that. But her leaving that money on the bed, woo, that is not adding up for me.
But then also was
I'm
like,
taking that money.
You weren't that mad because all it took for him was like she went to the elevator, pressed the button, the elevator was taking a while to reach the penthouse. He came out and basically was like, "Come on, I'm sorry, come on," and then she was like, "All right."
Yeah, that was crazy.
I was like, "What?" And she went back inside.
And then they had sex and kissed on the mouth.
Yeah, on the mouth, and then she said, "I love you." Oh my god. Literally,
It was crazy.
I yelled out loud.
It was crazy.
I was watching it, and she was like, "I love you," and I said, "Ah," because I couldn't believe that those words left her mouth.
And he was just sitting there with a grin on his face, like, "Yes, you do.
I
got you right where I want you."
I was
baby.
like, "Why does she love him now?"
He didn't say it back.
He did not.
I want to also
But
note
he did
that.
kiss her on the mouth.
He did kiss
and
her on the
he said
mouth.
he didn't do that.
He did kiss her on the mouth. Yeah, they had kiss on the mouth sex. And then
Wait. So was that a different type of sex? That's a certain.
I mean, it was. They had a whole montage. They had romantic music playing. They didn't do that when they were having sex early in the movie.
The piano sex was pretty hot.
Yeah, but it wasn't romantic.
Yeah.
It was erotic.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, once you having kiss on the mouth sex, it's not like I'm gonna just have sex with you on top of this piano real quick while we kick everybody out the room. Like, that's not the same thing. Hey guys, I think it's time for you to scram.
She was like,
I'm gonna have to bang this girl in the middle of the hotel ballroom. You guys beat it.
Why did he turn Italian?
I don't know.
Like a New York Italian. That was very New York Italian.
He's from New York.
Yeah. Well, okay, but all right.
Eddie Moneybags over here is gonna bang this broad.
You said
The rest of you guys better scram.
You sound like old boy from Do the Right Thing.
The pizza shop? Sal's?
Yeah, Sal's Pizza Shop.
Sal's.
But I had a point and I'm losing it now.
That's what this movie will do to you. This movie had a lot of points and it lost me on every single one. So.
Oh yeah, the kissing on the mouth sex. So like they had this whole experience, and now all of a sudden she loves this man, and she tells Kit, she was like, yeah, like it was crazy. I kissed him on the mouth, and Kit was like, what? What did I tell you about this?
Yeah,
you don't kiss on the mouth.
That's against
you
the
don't
law.
catch feelings.
Yeah,
and
she did both.
She's like, no, I don't really care for him like that. Like, no, like we just, And Kit was like, nah, like you're down bad.
She dropped the L word.
Yeah, Kit was like, this is trash. I don't know what he's doing to you, but this is not the move. So they're like, wait, so I'm trying to think of the timeline here. So this is after she's upset about Phil basically approaching her.
Mm-hmm.
So then this is when they have the whole I love you thing, and then like, doesn't he orders breakfast the next day or something? Or am I mixing them up? Because she gets mad twice. First time was Phil, second time was the condo thing. So I'm thinking the condo thing must have happened after the I love you thing, right?
I really don't remember.
I'm trying to remember like how this happened.
I felt like that was the same conversation. Because when she leaves the money and goes to the elevator, that was like the same day as the polo.
Right. So I'm saying that was the Phil thing.
Right.
Then they come back and then the I love you thing happens. Mm-hmm. So the condo must have been after that, is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Because that's when she's like, she leaves for real and goes back to her apartment.
Oh, yes. Okay. You're right. I was mixing things up.
Yeah.
So, right. So the first time she wants to leave is because of Phil.
Yes.
He tries to pay her off for the rest of the week. She leaves the money. He gets her to come back. They have kiss on the mouth sex. I love you. Mm-hmm. Da. And then that's when he's like, yo, let's keep this going, even though I got to go back to New York.
Yes.
Which I feel like she's like, I do want to kind of keep seeing this guy, but not where he's going to basically be like.
Not like this.
My de facto pimp.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole point.
That was the whole point.
Like, I need to be in control of my own life.
So she was like, yeah, I actually want more for my life now. I want to go back to school.
Yeah.
Which was dope. I was like, I respect her wanting to being like, okay, this life is actually pretty trash. And
well, because we're now about to get to the end of the movie, but I feel like we missed the part when Phil tries to rape her.
Bruh.
So like,
I was like, what part of the movie in the world?
I'm trying to think of like, I'm mixing up.
Okay, so here's what happened.
How did that even happen?
So when Edward is basically talking to Vivian about what he does for a living, And so she's basically like, okay, so you're getting these companies that are not doing well. Then you're like, you're basically acquiring them, and then you're like selling them off in parts. And he's like, yeah, we basically both screw people for money.
Yeah.
And so she realizes like, oh, like this job really isn't the best. And I think that what happens is he has a day where they wake up. This is after the I love you stuff. They wake up and she's like, just take the day off. And he's like, take the day off work? Like, never in his life has this guy
it's an interesting concept.
He's never taken a sick day, no vacation. Like, this guy just works. This is what he does. And he's like, what? And
she's like, aren't you the boss?
Right. And he's like, oh, I guess I can take off work. So they spend the day, which I was
that
like,
was ridiculous.
Okay. It kind of reminds me of like in movies where I was watching a horror movie the other night where basically like look, the employee had something going on mentally and they messed up at their job. And so the job was like, oh, we're going to give you like a week off of like paid leave to kind of get yourself together. And they're like, no, I can still work. And I'm like, bro, they're giving you paid leave for a week.
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, I can still work. So it was kind of like the idea.
I got some mental health issues going on right now. And my boss is listening.
Don't we all?
If my boss is listening, please give me my paid leave.
So
I need time to get my mind together. Please.
Needed mental health.
No, please. I demand to come into work.
Yeah, it's like, no, I can still do it. And it's like,
give me more projects, in fact. Like, what are you talking about, bro?
It's like you just finished working an 80-hour week. Like, what are we doing? So that's kind of what it reminded me of the whole idea of like taking off work. Like, no, I can't believe it. So he acquiesces, and basically they spend the day doing things like seeing the city the way she does. So they like go to the park, and like she's like, come on, take off your shoes. And he's like grounding, and like, you know, the shoes and socks are off. He's like, his feet are on the grass. They have a blanket out.
He's reading Shakespeare to her?
He's reading Shakespeare in the park. In the park. They're cuddled up on a blanket, leaning against a big, great oak tree.
Of course.
And she's cuddled up against his chest, and they're reading Shakespeare. And then after that, she takes him to some like local pizza joint that's like clearly like, you know, an around the way local spot where he would never set foot in on a regular basis. And like they're laying back, like, you know, having like, you know, $1 pizza or something.
They're having couples times. What they
do. And it's like, oh, y'all are dating. Like they're basically acting like Joe Fox and
Oh, don't get me started on Joe Fox. I don't want to talk about that man.
They're basically acting like them and You Got Mail. So I'm like, okay, so like things are going well. And then I think it's like after he's like talking to her and he's like, he wants to be, I guess, a quote unquote better person for her, I guess. So when he has the meeting the next day, they're supposed to take over this, you know, this guy's company. He basically asks everybody to leave the boardroom, and it's just him and the older gentleman. And he basically says to him, like, look, like, I'm not going to buy your, I'm not going to like dissolve the company. Basically he felt bad for him, and he's like, yeah, let's work together. Like, don't sign anything. So he gets ready to leave. He's walking out. His lawyer, Phil, comes in, and he's like, you know, Phil has it from here, guys. I'm all good. So he leaves out, and then Phil's like, oh yeah, great. He looks down the paperwork. It's not signed. He's like, what's going on? It's not signed. So Phil's having a heart attack because it was like, they've been working for years to get
Try
this.
to buy this guy out.
And
that's the whole point of why he brings her to dinner,
and
why
also
he's
even there.
Yeah, why he's even there.
This is the whole point of your business deal. It comes down to the last meeting, and you're gonna be like, "Oh no,
they've given up. Like they're like, yo, you got it.
Yes,
like, you could buy us out. Like we don't have it.
We're not gonna have it.
Like."
And he's like, no, like, don't worry about it. I'm on your side. And now he's the good guy. So Phil gets pissed because he's like, dude, like, we had so much money to make on this offer. You screw us over this sex worker? Like, who is she? This is crazy. So he goes back to the hotel.
So hold on. So now you just reminded me that's when he goes up to the hotel and he sees Vivian, and that's what he does. But before we talk about that, why do you think he
changed his mind,
turned down the deal? Like, what is? I was having a hard time finding the connection between, like, I guess we're supposed to assume that this Vivian character softened him.
Yes.
But
yes,
there was no. I felt like there was no grounding moment that connected their relationship to this
that
deal.
Meeting. Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, oh, like, we're connecting and doing these things. We're going to the opera. We're having cheap pizza and reading Shakespeare together. But then it's also like, what does that have to do with giving this old man his business back? So, like, what was your read on why he did that?
Because he even, at one point, like, they're having, like, a lot of these deep conversations, right? And he tells her about how his father was kind of much of a scumbag. Mm-hmm. And the first business he bought out was, like, his dad's or something. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah. That's how I got into the game.
And so it's like, you've been doing this for years to people that are even close to you. Like, this is what you do.
Right.
And somehow you feel bad for this older gentleman and his grandson and you're assigned to do it. But like I don't remember her saying something where it's like
moment of clarity.
Like, do you feel bad about this?
Yeah.
Or do you ever think about how this affects others? I don't remember. I mean, maybe it was there and I missed it, but I don't remember, like you said, like an instant where it was like, oh, she said this and then it led to this action. So I was actually surprised. Like, we went to the meeting and all of a sudden he was just like, yeah, like, he's smiling on his way out. Now he's like this happy-go-lucky guy.
I'm a good man now.
Yeah, he's just like...
But it's like, what?
I was like, wait, what? I mean, this guy, Edward, was such a strange character because, like I said, it's like they want him to be this good guy. But going back to your point about, like, how he didn't really care about his girlfriends and women, I think it was just people in general because there's a scene where... after Vivian leaves the hotel, he's talking to Barney, the hotel manager. Mm-hmm. And Barney says, oh, Vivian, yeah, like she left. The driver took her back to her hotel, blah, blah, blah. And like, no, sorry, it was before she left. I think he had taken her shopping earlier that day or something. And Barney made a comment about like, oh yeah, that Vivian, she's pretty something special or something like that. And he was like, oh, yeah, thanks. Like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Barney, the office manager. Like, It was like he didn't even know who the hotel manager was.
No.
And the hotel manager kept calling him, like, he's one of our special guests. Like, he comes here all the time. He spends money. So whenever he's in LA, he stays at this hotel. So it's like, you've seen this manager multiple times. And you have no idea who this man is.
Nah.
So it's like, you really have no regard for other people. Unless it serves a purpose for you.
This is like Can't Hardly Wait. It's like you sat next to me for 4 years, Amanda. You still don't know who I am?
Who's Preston?
Yeah, he was definitely giving Amanda Beckett vibes. It's just
so
like
that was the whole thing. So I was like, okay, so this is not really a good guy. So you're right. It was like this 180 turn in this meeting to be like, all right, now I'm gonna help you out, Grandpops. It was like, bro, why?
Instead of me buying your business, I'm going to get into business with you to help you save your business. It's like, what's his motivation for any of this? It's bad writing.
All right, so listeners, please send in comments and explain the movie.
Yeah, I would love to hear. I would love to hear theories from anybody
because we are lost
to help us figure this out. So then this is when Phil shows up to the hotel because he's looking for Edward. He's like, "Yo, Edward blew this deal.
It was
like,
crazy.
What's going on?" So he shows up, and he's already tight. He's pissed.
Yes.
And then he sees Vivian there. He's like, yo, this girl's still here? Like, what's going on?
She's the reason.
Yeah, she must had something. And also, this girl tried to play me like I don't got money.
Exactly.
When I'm trying to get some.
Right.
So then he, in true scumbag creep fashion, basically smacks her across the face.
Bruh, he slapped her so hard.
Basically press himself up on her and take advantage of her in the middle of this hotel room.
So maybe if I screw you, and take you to the opera, then I could be a happy guy, just like that.
Hey, get off me!
Ow! Ow! Come on! Okay.
Get off me! Get off me!
I guess my question is, how does anger, like, has anger turned to being boned up?
I mean, I'm not a rapist, so I can't answer that.
I'm not even talking about in a rape sense. Like,
I think that's exactly what it is, though, right? Like, they say that sexual assault isn't about horniness; it's about
the power and control.
So then it's like, I don't know. These guys must get off on being able to like assert their dominance. But that's.
I mean, I was thinking more along the lines of like even like during consensual stuff when you watch these like dramas or sitcoms. Typically, it's a couple and they're bickering and they're fighting and it's like I hate you. Then it's like
and then they start making out.
And I'm like, what?
You are so annoying. You make me sick. And then they just start ripping each other's clothes off.
And I was like, bro, I've never been so pissed off that I'm like, I want to make out with you so bad.
Yeah,
like that's never something that's ever crossed my mind.
That's such a movie trope. That's one that we really need to get rid of. That's bad. And that's probably something that we're gonna see in
I'm sure it'll come up.
That's a 90s staple right there. So then, of course, Edward, surprise, surprise, is actually at the hotel and then rips Phil off and throws him out. Get out my hotel room.
How dare you?
So now we can assume that their relationship is over. Number one, because he tried to rape this girl. And number two, because Edward blew like what was arguably like the biggest deal of the year.
Yeah.
So like, I guess Phil's probably not going to be his lawyer anymore. And then that's when they have the whole conversation about the condo. She gets upset. She's like, I'm not doing this. It's been real. I'm heading back.
And honestly, now that I think about it, the fact that she was almost sexually assaulted at the same time probably has something to do with that too. Because it's like,
this was supposed to be a
safe space. I got attacked here, and now I'm going to New York with this man. Like,
yeah.
Yes, he saved me, but like, bruh, like it just, I can understand. It's kind of like, yeah, this is too much. It's too much.
Yeah. So when she gets back to her crib, her and Kid are having this conversation, and she's like, yeah, I'm actually about to move. Where she says she's going to San Francisco.
Yeah, go to school.
And she had just been introduced to San Francisco because Edward took her to San Francisco on his plane to like go to dinner or something
Right.
So it's like, oh, I've seen San Francisco, now I want to live there. And it's close enough where I'm still in California, but like I need to like start over. And Kit's like, all right, I guess I gotta find a new roommate, but like good luck. And as she's packing up her things to leave, who shows up?
Oh man, this is a very say anything type of ending.
Oh, this is the Ramiest commiest.
He shows up in a limo, like standing up through the sunroof,
with a bouquet of $5 flowers that he just picked up off the corner.
And he's blasting opera music from the opera that he took her to, of course. And, you know, she looks out through her window and she's like, who's that? And of course it's Edward and like,
Vivian, are you there?
And he has an umbrella in his hand and he like pulls down the fire escape and he's afraid of heights, by the way. And he decides to climb up. And of course, she's on the top floor of this apartment building. He's climbing up the fire escape and he's terrified. He's like, has his back to the wall as he's like trying to shimmy across and climb up. And I remember like growing up in New York, like those fire escapes were mad sketchy.
Yeah.
Like I remember thinking like, if there's a fire, we might just die like trying to go out through the fire escape because those things were so rusty.
Yeah, mad shaky. Yeah.
They never been replaced.
No.
So like, it's like you might just die trying to get out from the fire. But anyway.
Possible.
He's climbing up and he gets to her and this is romantic ending where it's like, you know, he goes to her
this
house.
is also a callback because there's in one of their heart-to-heart late night conversations, she talks about how when she was a kid and her mom would send her to the attic or something like that.
Yeah.
And she would dream about how she would be saved. Someone would come and save the day.
Yeah, it's like a Prince Charming.
Yeah. So basically, he's like acting out this childhood fantasy that she had.
It's like Rapunzel
to like basically save her.
Yeah.
And then he shows up and he's like, "Yo, like they kiss and the movie ends."
But I'm kind of like, but what happens though? Like,
So
are you going to the condo?
So she is taking the condo,
right? I'm like, are you taking the condo? Because I'm confused.
Because he's not moving in with you.
No,
he's not going.
He's going back to New York.
He is going back to New York.
So like that's why I was like, okay, so now she's taking the like. I guess she's.
We
taking
really
the
don't
condo.
know where it ends, other than they kiss on the mouth
again,
and then they kiss on the mouth, and then it's like the end, happy ending, baby. They kissed on the mouth. Well,
you know, the kiss on the mouth is how you end the movies because you got to think kiss on the mouth, you got mail. Kiss on the mouth, can't hardly wait.
Yeah.
You got to kiss on the mouth.
Yeah, that is how these movies end. And it's funny that you brought back up You've Got Mail because I feel like that's another 90s rom-com with a very problematic male lead where I was just like so over Joe Fox. And I feel like I'm like kind of over Edward. Like I'm not really feeling this dude. And so I guess like this is a perfect place for us to transition into all the things that we feel like did not age well. Which I could say like, the entire concept of this movie didn't age well for me.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea of this poor woman who is being saved by this rich man, and like this is supposed to be the happy ending, but it's really just like, hey, you don't have any money, I have mad money, and now I'm saving your life. Let's kiss on the mouth. Like that's like the whole movie in a nutshell.
It
It's
really
just like,
didn't. It really didn't. It really didn't.
and even when she's having this conversation with her best friend, and her best friend's like, yo, you should do it. And she's like, yo, I don't know. Can you even give me one example of somebody who's like basically went to live with a John and it worked out for her?
Yeah.
I just want to know who it works out for. You give me one example of somebody that we know that it happened
Name
for.
someone?
Yeah,
you want
one
me to
person that it
name
worked
someone?
out
You want me
for.
to like give you a name or
Yeah,
something?
I'd like a name.
Oh God, the pressure of a name. Cinderella.
This is basically a modern day Cinderella movie where it's like this rags to riches.
That's true. That was her.
That is basically like you're being saved by this man who has money.
Yeah, but then when he doesn't want you anymore, you're stuck.
Well, yes, but that's why this doesn't age well.
That's the part they don't show, that you're stuck afterwards. So, okay, let's talk about how they were going to end it initially. So, this is from like a Vanity Fair article. They were talking about how, so initially the title of the movie was not Pretty Woman. It was actually $3,000.
Jeez.
And that was based on the amount of money, of course, that Vivian and Edward finally agree on for the week of services. And so the way it was supposed to end, it was supposed to be a much like grittier and like less of a fairy tale story. So it was supposed to end with basically at some point, Vivian and Edward are in a car. I believe she turns down the deal to go with the condo thing. She says no, she doesn't want to do it. So Edward then kicks her out of the car. And then he gives her the $3,000 she was supposed to get. She ends up on a bus with her best friend Kit to go to Disneyland for some reason. I don't like just to visit, but they're both drug addicted. So it ends with like them on the bus, like we're going to Disneyland. But then like Vivian stares up like off into the camera, and her face is like she's completely drug addicted. So her face is her eyes are like glazed over, and it just ends with like. I was like, oh my gosh, and I was like, so they changed it so that Vivian's.
I'm glad they didn't use that.
Vivian's character's not drug addicted in this one, and like even with Kit, although Kit was using drugs, she didn't really seem like a drug
didn't get
addict.
a sense that she was an addict.
That's what I'm saying.
I had a sense that she just like
did it for fun,
used drugs recreationally.
Right.
She might have snorted a little coke or smoked a little weed, but it wasn't like she's like a drug addict,
like a heroin addict. Like
no.
But initially they're supposed to be both drug addicts, and they end up like taking the $3,000.
Yeah, they toned that down.
And they're like, let's go to Disneyland, and then it's kind of like this faraway look in her eyes.
That's
as
not
her
a
eyes
rom-com.
glaze over.
That's a completely different
like,
movie.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So, but basically Disney acquired the film rights, and they were like, yeah, we're not.
We're changing this entire film.
Disney's like, we're not doing that. So they switched it up.
Yeah, we're still gonna have Phil try to rape her, but everything else, we're gonna change everything else.
We're gonna change everything else. Initially, the role of Vivian was offered to Molly Ringwald, who, as you know, was in 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink. But Ringwald turned it down because she didn't like the story, probably because she didn't want to be a drug addicted sex worker. So
also, it's not a very good story. It's funny because we talk about the 90s starting and the 80s ending, and like this is right where that happens in 1990. Molly Ringwald is like the
queen of the 80s,
the queen of the 80 teen movies specifically, and this is kind of a turning point when you think about like her career started to tail off in the 90s, and this is when Julia Roberts' career takes off. So who knows how
she
much
had taken this movie
might have been a turning point for both of their careers.
Oh, wow. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Man. Wait, were there any quotes that you wanted to discuss before we give our ratings?
I had a few quotes that I wrote down. I think some of the ones that stood out, like you talked about the one about how they said they both screw people for money. And there was a part where they're talking to each other and he's basically trying to compliment her, and they're having some conversation about like an inability to be able to accept compliments.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was Vivian or Edward, but one of them says, the bad stuff is easier to believe. And I thought that was interesting concept of like how, human nature is always to kind of like beat yourself up.
Yep.
And so like, yes, people love hearing good stuff about themselves, but when you hear something negative about yourself, you'll usually fixate it more.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you hear like famous people talk about like trying to avoid looking at social media comments because if they see 100 things that are positive and one thing
bad.
that's negative, that's what their brain will fixate on. Oh, this one person hated my stand-up special, or they think my movie sucked. So it's like, I think that's like a really interesting idea of like how much we fixate on and tend to believe the negative things about ourselves. And then there's another part where he's basically offering the condo and he says like, this will be different, we'll still be able to connect, but I'll be taking you off the streets. And she says, well, that's just geography.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
You're taking me off the streets, but you're still basically
my pimp.
Gonna be like. So I was like, oh, that's actually a pretty good line.
Yeah.
So they did some good things.
My lines were more giggle. So at one point, the first time he meets her, they're in the car and she's driving the car for him. And he says to her, you charge $100 an hour. That's pretty stiff. And then she reaches over to feel between his legs and she's like, no, but it has potential. So it was like, I was like, and then there's a part where like, so when Barney, the hotel manager, basically, he kind of approaches her in the hotel lobby, kind of to be like, so you're here with Edward. You are related to him, I'm assuming. He knows she's not, but he's trying to like, so like you're related to him, right? And she's like, yeah, like you are his, and she's like niece. He said, okay, and you don't have any other uncles in the area, do you? And she's like, excuse me. She's like, no, and he's like, okay, so once Mr. Edward leaves, like I'm assuming we're not going to see you around here again. And she's like, yes, that's correct. So he calls his friend Bridget up to be like, look after her. She's the niece of one of our special guests. And so when Vivian gets to the store, she sees Bridget, and Bridget says, oh, hi. And then she says, Bridget, just so you know, he's not really my uncle. And she's like, they never are, dear. So it's like, Bridget's like, I've been here before. I know how this works.
Like, this is how this works. Can we also just say, I just want to commend Barney Thompson, the owner of the hotel, the hotel manager, because I feel like he is actually the most pivotal character in terms of like making this entire experience worthwhile for her, Vivian, because primarily like he is the person who within this new rich world is like giving her a vote of confidence and like basically allowing her to be vulnerable with him. Yeah. And like giving her, an etiquette lesson, or this is the fork that you have to use, or whatever. So like he kind of like validates her and makes her feel seen. And I would even argue that he does a better job of that than Edward himself. And I think about how this movie and like her experience would have played out without that Mr. Thompson character.
Oh, man.
Like if it was just like her getting all this money and being in this hotel where nobody wants her to be there, but then like you also have to keep in mind that he's gone for most of the day. Yeah. So she's like basically just like spending his money and being by herself. And it felt like kind of like sex slavey to me, like this kind of like have her hold up in a hotel and like give her money to occupy herself.
When I need you, I'll call for you.
Yeah, but then it's like
be in the lobby on time at 7:30.
Be in the lobby with your cocktail dress on and don't make me call twice. So then it's just kind of like, like I feel like she might have. Who knows? She might not even have stayed for the whole week if it wasn't for Mr. Thompson. Like he kind of like kept everything going.
Yeah. I mean,
and also he could have like kicked her out, and he didn't do that. So then, like, he was also technically the reason that she was even able to stay in the hotel in the first place.
Right. Yeah, he was a nice character. I appreciated him. Although Edward had no idea who he was, but
of course. What about themes?
God.
Oh God.
Listeners.
That's always
listeners help us out.
It's always encouraging when I ask you for the theme of a movie and you start with oh God. That's encouraging.
I mean,
so I see you came up with plenty.
The themes.
Well, I took a shot at this. I have one.
You take it.
So what I came up with is I'm thinking about like the story of Edward and Vivian, who I guess are in love now at the end of this movie.
God.
But if there is a theme to be pulled out of it, I think it's this concept that like in order to have a true connection with someone, you kind of have to stop like trying to force the issue or put on airs. Like I feel like she had a wall up because she's like, I don't know this man from Adam.
Which she should.
And which of course. And he kind of had like this wall of his wealth and like his position. And I feel like he was trying to protect himself, but then also like try to impress her at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like once they were able to kind of like have those pillow talks and like be able to learn who each other like really was behind, oh, she's a street worker, oh, he's this rich guy who just spends money and has random women. But like I feel like they were able to kind of like form a deeper connection when they stopped forcing it. Whether it's not just like, whether it's him trying to buy her a condo or him just like giving her money to stick around. But I feel like when she says like, I love you, it's based on the other things. It's not based on he gave me money to go shopping.
That's true.
It's based on like, oh, he took me to the opera. He taught me how to play chess.
The experiences.
The
Shakespeare in the Park, of course. That was number one.
Shakespeare in the Park. So yeah, I mean, that to me is like the really only concrete. And then I even think not only their connection, but whatever we're supposed to draw from his decision business-wise, there seemed to be some sort of connection that he must have built with this old man who he was going to basically like end his
Screw
business.
over. Yeah.
And I feel like, again, he stopped forcing the issue because, like you said, they'd been working on this deal for a year or two.
I still don't know why he did it, but
I still don't know why he did it either. But I feel like that's connected to this theme of like being able to connect with someone when you stop like BSing them. So,
all right, I'll take it.
yeah.
I'll just say I concur. Can I do that?
Sure. Sure. It's not the strongest theme we've had on Rewatch, but
I'll do better next week, I promise.
that's all I've got. So I guess this is the time for us to give our rewind rating for Pretty Woman.
People are gonna be mad at me.
Uh-oh.
This is me being very, very, very gracious. I'm giving it a 3.
A gracious 3. Okay.
Gracious 3. I know it's a classic. I know this is Julia Roberts' big break. Did I enjoy the film? Like, yeah, there were some parts like her getting revenge of the lady in the store was cool. Like, I really enjoyed Barney's character.
She came back as a rich black woman.
She came back as Oprah.
Yeah, exactly.
That was always nice to like, put it in the face of these stuffy, pretentious white people. I definitely liked that part of it. And of course, Barney's character, I really enjoyed him as well because, as Joel said, he opened up her eyes and really made the experience better for her at the hotel. But other than that, it was like, what is the motivation? I kept going back to this question in my head. What is the motivation? Why? Why? Why does he love her? Why does she love him? How does it end? The ending was still very vague. Like, yes. So now they agree that they like each other or they love each other. Although he's never actually said that to her. So maybe she loves him and he like kind of likes her. I don't know. But I just felt like I don't know where this is going. And I didn't get the warm and fuzzies. Not like I'm not really a fuzzy, warm kind of person to begin with. But I still feel
Cold and hard, actually.
Okay. That's a lot. But there are rom-coms that I like, that I can watch again and again. I feel like that's a good movie. But this one for me is like, yeah, I'm not rewatching this. Like, if I see it on TV, it goes back to that. If I see it on TV, I'm probably not going to watch it. And I think, well, now that I think about it, I need to reevaluate this because I think I gave a 3 to You Got Mail.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to compare You Got Mail to Pretty Woman, I think I might go You Got Mail. And that's crazy. But I think I might. I think I might. only because
It's getting spicy.
it
now.
was it was a little bit more entertaining for me. Like I feel like You Got Mail had like a little bit more like more lines that were funny, more characters that I enjoyed. So if I gave You Got Mail a 3, I might gotta do 2.5. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, y'all. 2.5.
Yeah, I think You've Got Mail had more of the calm in the rom-com.
Yes.
This
Yes.
movie didn't have as many LOLs. And if they're gonna be mad at you, they're probably gonna be mad at me too.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm actually, before I give my rating, I think I want to kind of like frame it. Because
Okay.
if I'm giving something like a 5, I think the only 5 I've given so far is probably, I think I give a 5 for Sister Act and for Jumanji. So like a 5 is like, this is a movie that I super enjoy. This is a movie that I can like watch over and over again. It's got like, it's entertaining, da 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 da. A 1 would be, which we have not given any 1s yet.
No.
But a 1 is like, this movie is actually awful.
Just turn it off. Just turn it
So
off.
I'm trying to think about like where would Pretty Woman fall, but between that scale for me of like entertainment value, rewatch value, and its ability to like stand the test of time, given that it's over 30 years
I mean,
old.
you doing all this explaining is really making me nervous.
No, I mean, so I say all that to say I'm giving this a 3
Okay.
because I feel like it's not a movie that I'm gonna want to watch back over and over. I've obviously pointed out many times in this episode how many holes I saw in like just the motivations of the characters. It didn't make a ton of sense.
Divots?
I'm also I also understand that like it's a rom-com and like romantic movies typically have a lot of holes because like you said, like they just want to get to the big kiss at the end of the movie. So I feel like I'm also kind of grading on a curve to that extent where it's like,
Okay.
this is not a movie where it's like, The Fugitive, where it's like, yo, this movie actually really needs to make sense or
Yeah.
else it's going to be a bad movie.
Okay.
Like people are really just watching it to kind of like feel good.
Feel good. But did you feel good?
I didn't feel great, and that's why I can't give it any higher than a 3. I feel like I was generally entertained, like just like watching Julia Roberts spend a bunch of money and just like seeing her play this very different character than she's playing in like The Pelican Brief or like,
yeah.
like I feel like she commanded all of the scenes that she was in.
That's fair.
And also like being able to kind of see how the rich live is always very interesting. Like I feel like that's one of the most intriguing parts of like Succession is just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like
Yeah.
people live like this.
Yeah.
Like that alone, I think has some entertainment value. And so like there were parts of the movie that I generally enjoyed, but I feel like the plot line falls flat.
Yeah.
So despite the fact that like I might, if I'm channel surfing, watch this scene or that scene or watch them at the polo grounds or watch him snap the box with the necklace in it. It's not a movie where I'm necessarily gonna want to watch the whole thing over. So for me, it's
Yeah.
like it's like comfortably mid. Like it's not
Okay.
awful, it's not great. It's just mid. It's just a
Okay.
3.
Okay. So you're feeling pretty apathetic about it. It's just
Yeah, like it's cool. It's not a movie that I'd be like I hate it, but it's definitely not a movie that I love. Like it's cool.
I didn't really care for it, but it's okay.
Yeah.
2.5 and 3. That's you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So feel free to leave us all your hate mail.
I know.
I already know. We already got a bunch of heat for the Can't Hardly Wait.
Oh my gosh.
Like people
Did
were not.
we?
People were not
Did
upset
we?
with people. People are like this movie's in my top 10,
Right.
and you gave it. So yeah, I already know. But that's that's a part of the fun of the podcast, and we like hearing that people disagree with us because
Yes.
it's boring if you agree with everything that we have to say, and we are just two people who are enjoying movies from the 90s. So if you have differing opinions, please let us know. Any other thoughts on Pretty Woman?
No. I guess yeah, I don't know. I think we pretty much touched on everything we got to touch on. Oh, one last thing. Just one last thing that I forgot to mention earlier. Regarding roles. For the role of Edward, Al Pacino turned it down. So can you imagine Al Pacino and Molly Ringwald?
Jeez. Goodness gracious. Wow.
I'll leave you with that.
Wow. No. That movie's not getting a 3, I'll tell you that much. Sheesh. I'm glad they didn't.
That was for the grittier ending, obviously.
Right.
Him throwing her out of the car. Physically
Get the hell
throwing
out
her.
the car!
Say hello to my little friend.
Right, exactly. Nah, that's not gonna work. Yeah, Disney made the right choice there. God.
All right. Well,
All right.
that's all we got, guys.
We'll see you on the next one.
Later.